Welcome, government class. Good to see you again. Today is the Friday lesson, which is lesson 3, dealing with the judicial branch. And remember, last time we talked about the specifics that were mentioned, or the lack of specifics that were mentioned in Article 3 of the Constitution, dealing with the judicial branch, and we did with the particulars of that, or what was specifically specified. And then we talked about different types of jurisdiction that the court would deal with. Now, those jurisdiction definitions are not in the Constitution. Those are things that have come about through history. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the different types of law, and so that we can see where the Constitution fits into those later on as we talk about the judicial branch, and then as we talk about different courts. So the different types of law that are in effect today. So you will be taking notes on this in your notebook, and then you may use those notes at the end of the day or at the end of the session for your quiz. All right, so types of law. First one, dealing with divine law. Now this one we kind of already went over when we dealt with Romans chapter 13 as well as 1 Peter chapter 2. And this is the law that is established by God and written in His Word. Okay, and there are two aspects to this. One is what we call the revealed divine law, and we see that in 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17, where God specifically revealed these in His Word, and we can follow that. Now, the law or the commandments come down to two great principles. And this is something that we as Christians need to remember in every aspect of law. And the heart of divine law is the two things that are mentioned in Matthew chapter 22, dealing verses 37 through 40. And that is, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second one is like unto it, love your neighbor as you love yourself. If we can remember those two divine laws and people were to implement those in our community, we would not see the other laws come into play so much, or the penalties of the other types of law being implemented in different acts in society, because we would be following those two great principles, loving God and loving others as ourselves. So that is divine law. And then you get into what we call natural law. Now, we're going to run into a problem here with natural law. If you look at this definition, it says, given to all men through the method and order of creation. So the key word there is creation. So we have to deal with the origin of men. Do we believe in creation, or do we believe in evolution? Because if that's the case, natural law changes. So the way that a person interprets natural law in dealing with society is depending on their view of the origins of men. That's how important it is for us to go all the way back to the beginning and decide what we believe about man's origins. We as Christians believe that man was created. Therefore, there are laws set in motion that govern men. And those laws are implanted in us through the act of creation because we're created in the image of God. And so in that aspects, we need to understand that it helps us know what is right and what is wrong. So that comes from creation. If we're an evolutionist, or we believe that man evolved, there's going to be a different thought process through that. So that is very important for us to determine in the ideas of natural law. Some people take the idea that this is our conscience, our innate ability to decide what is right and wrong is part of natural law. And one of the things we want to keep in mind is that it's implanted, not written. So it's within us. All right? So that's natural law. And then the next one is dealing with common law. In common law, and this is basically the English society. A lot of the things that they do in England are not based on written law. They're based on tradition. And so if you notice here, it's an unwritten system of laws based on court decisions, customs, and usages. So it's how the law has been played out for years and years and years and years. And this is just the way it is because of, it's just the way it's been done. And everybody's accepted it. So it's common. For instance, there's the common law marriage, or marriage dealing with a common law. that if you've been together for so long, the courts can determine that you're actually married, even though you've never gone through the actual commitment or the service. So there's different aspects to this, but common law is based on court decisions that have been handed down, or what they either call precedent or something that they've set before. Customs, we've just done it this way. This is the way it's always been done. So if you go and you look at the pomp and circumstance within England, some of those things that they've been doing for hundreds of years have never been written down. It's just the way they've always done it. And then how the law has been used in the past. So that's basically the idea behind common law. Now, one of the scariest ones that has been implemented, and this is one of the ones that you had in your definitions from Monday, the interpretation and defense of the law is shaped or controlled by the current moral trends of society. Now, listen to that again. Controlled by the current moral trends of society. So as society changes, so does the law. So the law cannot be consistent throughout. It changes because a majority or a group of people say this is now right. And it's not based on anything outside of but what the majority is saying at this point. And if we say this is right, then it's right. So law has the ability to be changed. Law has the ability to be manipulated because of this sociological idea of laws, where society dictates how law is interpreted and how law is implemented within the community. So we've got to be careful today. And it kind of goes back to the idea of when the flood, when man did what was right in his own eyes continually. Well, that's where we're headed with sociological law. Because a group of people can say, this is right, and then tomorrow they can change it. Or 10 years from now, they can change it. But that was right at the time because this is what the situation. And they're saying law is not universal, which goes back again to the idea of humanism and natural selection and things of that nature. All right? So sociological law, we have to be very careful of. And we have people in our court systems today who are implementing this in their ability to make judgments. Now, at the beginning of the year, I went through how people came to believe that separation of church and state was in the Constitution. We determined that it was not. There's two clauses, the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. There is no separation mentioned there, that phrase exactly. And we saw how people began to implement that because it's what they wanted. They wanted to change it where religion was removed. They didn't want to be answerable to God. They didn't want religion controlling their lives. They wanted it taken out of government in the public sector. So in order to do that, they had to change the whole thought process and get people to believe that it was a part of the Constitution. And we saw that it wasn't. And that's how sociological law works, where they can eventually change the way we do things, the way we believed, just because it's a whim at this point in society. So, something to be wary of in the future, but that's sociological law. Then we have civil law, law that deals with the rights and relationships of private citizens. Civil cases, usually civil cases are not criminal, or not, I shouldn't say criminal, but do not have jail time. They usually have financial money attached to them, some kind of penalty in that way. But it deals with property, it deals with my rights versus your rights and things of that nature. So that's civil law. And then you have criminal law, which is law dealing with crimes against the state or community. And then there's always set penalties in criminal law. One of the things that we saw as when we broke down bills, there were 5 parts to the bills. And one of the ones for a law, they always had to include the maximum and minimum penalties for breaking the law. Okay? And so that's what criminal law deals with too. When a judge goes in and he declares someone, or the jury comes out and says this person is guilty, the judge has to take the guilt and then can put that guilt as far as the penalty between the minimum and the maximum. That's his ability to do that. The judge determines the sentence. The jury determines the guilt. Okay? So law dealing with crimes against the state or community. And then the last one that we're going to deal with is constitutional law. Law that deals with the interpretation of the U.S. Constitution, the rights of citizens that have been granted. So that's dealing with the amendments as well, especially the first 10. And so that's constitutional law. There are other types of law, corporate law, commerce law, international law. So there's different types of things that you can deal with when you go into law, but these are the ones that we will be talking about as we do deal with the judicial system. Okay, so this is the lesson for today, dealing with the different types of law. We'll be back at it on Monday, taking our next step in our discussion. But remember, after this is over today, please go online and take your quiz based on the notes that we went over. So I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you have some time to spend with the Lord, and just reflect a little bit on everything that's going on in our society with the coronavirus and isolation and the number of people that are being infected across the United States, as well as the number of deaths. And it's a very solemn thought. And so I hope you're praying for those, especially those that we visited on the mainland and people that we came in contact with. Like Larry, our bus driver, who lives in Connecticut, which is right near where the hotbed's going on. And Larry is a person of risk, so we need to be praying for him. And so God bless you. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.